Well, Saints need to dust themselves down and prepare for those playoffs, and that all starts this weekend. It's the final home game of the regular season. Stoke City, the visitors. Steve, it was a 1-0 win at Stoke back in October. I think Stu Armstrong with the only goal just before half-time. What are you expecting from Stoke on Saturday? It's going to be all about what we can do and whether we can get a reaction from those two defeats, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, Stoke are. I mean, they're not mathematically safe, but with so many teams below them, and I think Huddersfield play Birmingham this weekend, so taking points off each other. So I think they're effectively safe. So maybe there's a little bit of freedom released from Stoke, but they beat Plymouth, beat their manager's old club pretty handsomely at the weekend, 3-0. So they'll go into it with a little bit of confidence, I think. Their headline win of the season was away from home, away at Hull. They won 2-0 up there, I think. So, I mean, it's not going to be an easy game, but they're a side that if you can get in front against them, then I mean they're very much like us. You get in front against them, and you've probably got the game won. They don't seem to have that sort of mental fortitude to get back into games in the same way that we struggle in that sense. So first goal on Saturday is the key. Get in front early on, and I think we have a comfortable afternoon. Don't get in front, and all of a sudden atmosphere turns, and it's not particularly pleasant.
I was going to mention the atmosphere. Glenn, I know you kind of alluded to it earlier, but Sekou Mara back from his 3-game ban at the weekend. I don't know if that's going to make any difference or not. Obviously, we know that it looks like Jack Stevens is going to be starting. What are your thoughts ahead of this one?
Well, I just hope we use it to try and find out some things that we don't know already. Russell Martin, he tends to go for the obvious option. Like if we got a midfield injuries and Joe Rothwell's available, then he comes in. Well, we know he's not good enough. He's not looked good enough. He's spanked a couple of goals in, but that's it. He doesn't give you anything other than that. So I would like to see some of the. We're always triumphing the youngsters. I would like to see this game against Stoke is as close to a dead rubber as you're ever going to get. It's a dead rubber for us. We're finishing fourth, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, slight chance of third, but our players are probably crap themselves if they think they can move up a place. So that's not going to happen. So we're finishing fourth. Stoke, it's virtually over for them. They're virtually safe, as Steve said. So, this is a game where, especially in front of a home crowd, where I would really like to see, one or two of the youngsters given some. Even if it's only 25, 30 minutes, just see what you can do. Can you hack it? Because, the wheels are falling off at the moment. We've lost the last 2 games. We've got another 2 games before the important stuff starts again. And if we do somehow make it to the Premier League, that's a conversation completely for another day. Whether we're good enough or not, we've got to go for it, and we've got to try and find some answers to the problems that we've got. So, I would like to see David Brooks tried initially where Stuart Armstrong was, and maybe bring Sulemana in or someone like that. But, the game up at Stoke, Sulemana tore their right back to bits. Hoover absolutely tore him to bits, and he pulled him back about 4 times. But we had another crap referee who didn't do anything about it. So. And, that wouldn't surprise me if that happens at the weekend. Sulemana comes in on the wing, and I'd like to see Brooks playing in midfield just to see if that works. It might not work because he's very, very lightweight. He's not going to win any tackles, but Stuart Armstrong doesn't do much of that anyway. So why not give that a go? I'd rather they did that than tried Aribo or Smallbone in that position where you know what you're going to get. So. The result really doesn't matter. We'd like to end the season with a win, but at the end of the day, I can see this being a quite sort of laboured 1-1 draw, something like that. But no, I just hope we use it and that the game has a purpose in terms of we actually learn something.
The other side of that argument, Alfie, is that it does have a huge purpose, because if we lose that and then we lose to Leeds as well, you're looking at 4 defeats heading into the playoffs. So this has got to be a big game. They've got to go out and win this one.
Yeah, and I suppose the last home game of the season, you always want to win as well. They need to go into the playoffs with momentum. We've seen that. But I think it feels so far away now, the idea of them winning at Wembley and getting up to the Premier League, which is obviously, we just said, is a different conversation. But stranger things have happened than a good football team winning 3 games. In that situation, stranger things have happened in the past, and they are a decent football team. But let's be clear, they've, up until Tuesday when Leicester overtook them, they had scored the most goals in the league. The obvious problem is that they can't stop conceding them, and I think they're actually going to be, they're like 2 or 3 goals away now from conceding more goals than Swansea did last season under Russell Martin, and their squad is so much worse than Southampton's, and it was last year. So there is a real problem there. Obviously, they need to stop conceding goals, but I agree with Glen. I'd like to see a few different things tried. I think the one thing that will be interesting is that Russell Martin said he's only going to pick players based on how much they're fighting for their teammates, fighting for the club. So if there are any big omissions, it will give you an insight into who he at least thinks perhaps isn't giving everything, which is why it's always maybe a little bit dangerous making those sort of statements. But I do actually think that Russell Martin should be honest about that. I think that he's taken pelters all season, rightly or wrongly. Certain things his fault, certain things not his fault. And players do often get away with murder, so I don't mind when a manager comes out and says it how it is. But yeah, they need to get some confidence back, need to win this one, because like you said, if they go to Leeds off the back of having lost 3 in a row, they're going to smell blood. They might be needing a result for promotion or the title, and they're just going to get swallowed by that Ellen Road atmosphere, and it could be a grisly day out.
The only picking players who are really willing is interesting, because I think it might have been yourself that he was talking to. He kind of doubled down on it afterwards and said, if you question about the lineup or you ask me about the players, that's the answer, and that's what I'm going to come back to you. So he's adamant about this.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's why it makes it all the more interesting. So I guess we'll see if there's any big players that come back in. They've obviously earned it in the last couple of days.
Is it a mentality thing, Steve? We've got to win just to get the mentality right, because it seems to me it's another season we're talking about that has just kind of fizzled out, and this has happened for the last 3-4 years now.
Yeah, I think so. Historically, Saints have always, like in seasons that weren't sort of necessarily down to the final day, usually obviously fighting relegation in the past. Season we've got ourselves into good positions in the league, and then we've let the season fizzle out, and it's basically got on the beach very early. But this season there's something to aim for. It's not a case of, you can fully accept that in the Premier League, to a player there's probably very little difference between finishing 8th and finishing 14th. And therefore you can kind of accept that they probably switch off once safety's there and there's nothing sort of higher up that you can aim for. But in this situation, you've still got promotion to go for. It's still entirely in your own hands. You win. You don't even need to win these next 2 games, although it's obviously going to be very useful in terms of having a bit of momentum, but also just a bit of confidence. But basically, you've got to win 2 games, possibly. You could get away with not winning any of them. You could literally draw 5 games from here, and we still get promoted. I don't think I'd fancy that, winning a playoff semi-final on penalties and a playoff final on penalties.
Yeah, we don't forget Huddersfield did it in 2017. They didn't score a goal, Huddersfield.
Yeah. Well, I think they got a goal. They were credited with the goal, but it was a Sheffield Wednesday own goal.
Oh, was that okay? They drew 2 semi-finals. They drew a final and went up.
And went up with a negative goal difference.
That's where we're looking for inspiration now, is it?
Yeah. But it's as you say, it's a mentality thing. You've got to make sure you're in the frame of mind that you are confident of beating who you come up against, because whoever we come up against in the playoffs has got there on merit, and they're a decent side. We've seen, the Championship has been a weird sort of, we've had this sort of mini league between the 4 of us, pretty much since about 3 weeks into the season, really. It was kind of thought that was likely the way it was going to go. I think we were always going to kind of recover from the September nonsense. But But then beyond that, you've kind of had a load of mini leagues, and people have actually got promoted and relegated from those mini leagues as the season progressed. Because if you think Blackburn, when we played them before Christmas, were on the edge of the playoffs, and you're now talking they could still go down. Whereas West Brom started a bit poor, and they're now they're in the playoffs. Probably will end up being comfortable in the end, because I don't think Hull are going to win all their games. So you're playing against teams that have got a little bit of momentum, a little bit of bounce about them, and they're good sides. They know how to win games of football. And if we suddenly forget how to win games of football, then yeah, we're in a whole world of trouble.
I just wonder the odds on Alex McCarthy saving the penalty in the shootout at Wembley and then being the hero.
119th minute substitute to bring Joe Lumley on.
Steve, I just want to get your thoughts. I don't think I've asked you about the midfield and the conundrum. Obviously, Joe Rothwell could potentially be out. It does mean the only senior options at the moment could be Smallbone, Aribo, Downs, and Show Charles. What would you do at the weekend?
I thought Charles was okay, actually.
Yeah, so did I.
Tuesday night, he was all right. He at least seemed to, after the first 5 or 10 minutes, he got a bit of awareness about what was around him. In that, actually, more often than not, he had time to turn, and that kind of probably gives him a bit of confidence that actually his positional awareness is a lot better than perhaps his confidence was telling him. So I think I'd go with Charles in there alongside. You have Smallbone. Maybe Smallbone and the Rebo, but it's a bit stodgy. Maybe it's a Rebo and Dibbling. I mean, can Dibbling play that sort of 8 role? I don't know.
This way he plays every game for 21s, but
fair enough. But I mean, the 21s is a very different environment. You're up against players of a similar size and stature to him, whereas coming up against Stoke is a very different proposition. But it'd be interesting. I'd be all in favour of giving that a go, because we know at least that he's got the drive and can dribble and carry the ball. He's not afraid of taking on players, as we saw in that Watford FA Cup replay. And yeah, why not give him a chance? I mean, he's been in and around the first team squad for most of the season. So it's not as if he doesn't have any sort of interplay sort of knowledge of the players that he's going to be around. It's not like he's come in completely out the cold. So yeah, why not give him a go? And yeah, I think like Glenn said, I think I'd put Sulemana in, just because we've seen nothing from him in terms of sub appearances. So why not use him as the sort of battering ram of sort of running at the fullback and just trying to knacker them out for an hour or so. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then he served his purpose, and then Ryan Fraser can come on and maybe take advantage. But I mean, Fraser's a guy who's got a wealth of experience, and he needs to pull his finger out, quite frankly, because he's been really poor since he came back from his injury after the international break. Brooks has been kind of uninterested, seemingly, for the most part. Flickers here and there against Preston and Cardiff, but other than that, has flattered to deceive. And Edozie looks like he's got no confidence. Basically, since he came back from his injury, obviously he's struggled to get in the side when we've been winning. And yeah, now when he's getting his chance, kind of it's not really happening for him. So yeah, I mean the wide player, you could probably pick it out of a Tom Bowler in the way that Ruben Sellers might probably did last season. But ultimately Adams and Adam Armstrong going to start, and it's a case of.
I was going to say, we joked about Sekumara coming back, but like, how protective are you going to be of Cherlands at this point? Does he need to play? Should he play?
Well, he's not our player in 8 weeks, so I don't care. Play him.
No, but you need him for the playoffs.
Well, yeah.
If he's out for the playoffs, we can pack it up now. He's got no Dewey, no Chad.
But then he's on a run at the moment, isn't he? He's on a run of decent performances. I think the moment you take him out of that firing line, all of a sudden you force a reset, and he's then got to work to get himself back up. And who knows whether that would actually happen at that stage of the season.
I think it was Alcaraz that played through the middle last time we played Stoke. I think it was that time when Che Adams was still like on the bench and he wasn't really starting. We know that Jack Stevens is going to start, that's for sure. And I guess all eyes will be on the team sheet just to see who isn't there. I think we'll probably
I'd play Lumley.
Who isn't?
I'd play Lumley, yeah, because one thing that was very evident from Tuesday night was that Leicester were Leicester haven't really been sort of aggressively pressing teams this season, but they were very visibly pressing us very, very high and very fast, knowing that we didn't want to pass the ball back to the goalkeeper, because obviously we're not as confident with McCarthy with the ball at his feet. I mean, he's okay. He can pass the ball, but there's just that sense that he's not quite in the same sort of ball at his feet ability as Bazunu. Now we've seen Lumley in cup games this season, and he's been perfectly comfortable doing it in tight spaces and playing those little triangles around oncoming centre forwards in the 6-yard box and stuff like that. So I'd say bring Lumley back in and get us back to playing the defensive system that we want to play, because I think that having that comfort and the knowledge of that you've got effectively the extra outfield player that you can bounce passes off and play those little 1-2s makes such a difference. I think when we're in possession,
as long as if someone has a shot at Lumley, he uses his arms and don't try and save it with his teeth like he did at Watford.
Would that be the mission, Glenn, that you maybe got that call wrong? I know we spoke about it a little bit last week about Lumley or McCarthy, and he went with McCarthy for a reason. If he then suddenly turns around and changes the keeper, is that him going, I maybe got that one wrong?
Well, he's given himself an opportunity to do that with his comments after the game.
Yeah, I was going to say
and McCarthy is out of contract in a few weeks' time anyway, so it doesn't matter if he's upset. He's just going to be sat on the bench if that's the call that Russell Martin wants to make. So we discussed it last week that the McCarthy's inclusion for that game was a bizarre one anyway, and it still doesn't make a whole lot of sense, bearing in mind what's going on this season. So whilst McCarthy didn't have a chance with any of the goals, he's not been really a good goalkeeper for us for about 3 or 4 years now. I mean, he had a great season. He's player of the year one year, wasn't he? 2017 or 18, something like that.
And he only played half the season.
Yeah, but he's certainly not what he was, either down to confidence or just getting older or whatever. But no, I wouldn't be against Lumley coming in. I think we need to do something to shake us out of the malaise of the last 2 games, and that certainly would be something worth looking at. So you tell Lumley he's going to play the next 2 games, and then if he's a disaster as well, then you've got a decision to make before the playoffs start, haven't you? But now Steve, I hadn't thought of it beforehand, but now Steve's mentioned that, I actually think it wouldn't be a bad idea.
How's the lad that signed the contract today, Alfie? He's the youngster. Was he 21? He's not even that old yet, is he? The goalkeeper.
He's Ollie Wright. He's currently on loan at Worthing, I think, so not quite ready.
Not an option.
They've got several young goalkeepers at Saints, but to be fair, I think Ollie actually probably is my favourite of the one. But yeah, obviously you're not going to do that, are you? I mean, I can't remember the last time. You might know actually, Glenn, potentially. When was the last time a goalkeeper came out of the Saints Academy to play a game for the first team? Because I'm pretty sure
Alan Blaney.
Yeah.
What year is that?
That would have been 2005
or something. Yeah.
3-4, something like that.
Blimey.
He played a couple of games at the end of the season, Northern Irish lad, and he kind of disappeared after that.
Did he go to Bournemouth, did he? Or was that someone else?
He may have been there for a while maybe on loan or something like that. Because, obviously, bear in mind, this would have been back when Bournemouth were 4th division.
Yeah.
He won save of the season for a ridiculous save from Alan Shearer.
It was a Gordon Banks-esque thing, wasn't it? In that insane end of season 3-all draw, which cost Newcastle a Champions League place, which was satisfying.
If anyone can find that online tonight, I'd love to see that. Let's do some score predictions. Go on, Alfie. Sorry,
I was just going to say the one sort of final talking point I had in mind was that apart from the fact he's being sued for £2 million by his former club, the one thing I do feel sorry about Russell Martin is that his best 11 has never been less clear, and we're 2 weeks away from the playoffs, and that's a result of poor performances individually and just terrible luck with injuries. So to lose your goalkeeper and have that conundrum, to lose your lock picker in chief and have that conundrum, Flynn Downs, I mean, who knows if he'll ever play football? You'd like to think he will, but we keep getting told he's nearly back, and then we never see him again. So, that's another decision he didn't need. All three of the fullbacks have decided to pack it in terms of defending. You've got Jack Stevens, who wants to play. He wants him to play, but he's already got 2 centre backs. So I feel for him in that regard, because I don't think he has any idea what his starting 11 will be when they go to West Brom on Sunday, the 12th of May, or whatever it is. So they've got 2 games to try and figure that out. And, not all of that is his fault. I mean, in my opinion. So I think he's been a bit unlucky there.
That's why I think this weekend, I think it is a big game. I think we need a big performance. And I think I'm going to stick my neck on the block and say we're going to keep a clean sheet and we'll score 2 goals. So I'm going for a 2-0. Ben's gone for a 2-1 Saints win. Alfie, do you want to go first for your prediction this week?
Yeah, just with all that in mind, I totally agree with Glen. I think earlier said it's going to be, it's not going to be obviously the most exciting football match. It's not going to be very fluid. I don't predict that at all. But I think that Stoke will just not come with enough, and I think that Saints will edge a 1-0 win that won't be massively convincing, but it will be served up to us after as a bit of a turning point, and hopefully it will be.
It'll be enough. Steve?
Yeah, I do suspect we'll probably just about have enough. I mean, a lot depends on the 11 we pick, whether we go into full this doesn't matter mode. Although, I mean, arguably, we saw that in the last 20 minutes on Tuesday. But I mean, if we've got our head in the game, then we'll win. And Stoke, I mean, they're a relatively poor team in the context of this division. So 2-1 win.
Okay, and Glenn?
I think it's an interesting game for the point of view that Stoke were the only team that provoked us into any sort of aggro this year. Do you remember the game up there? It ended up with a sort of 15-man brawl, didn't it?
Oh, after the end,
after the game. So they were a kind of a nasty bunch back then. They got a new manager now. Obviously, Alex Neil's gone. Stephen Schumacher's come in. Stephen Schumacher had a very good reputation from his Plymouth days, having got them promoted and whatnot. And hopefully they'll survive this season with him having left. So I'll be interested to see what sort of team Stoke are. Whether they're a bit less confrontational than they were. But if they are confrontational still, which they probably will be, we have to we have to front up to it. And whatever 11 gets picked, they have to. It's an old cliche about fighting for your right to play your football. But we have to do that, and it's actually probably quite a good team to play, because whatever 11 go out on the pitch, they're going to go onto the pitch with a rocket up their backside from having been so bad on against Leicester. So yeah, hopefully we'll get some sort of response. If we don't get a response out of them, then it is slightly worrying going into that Leeds game, because this team, this group of players, they can play well. Whether we can do it without the key players that Alfie mentioned is still to be answered, because we haven't managed to do it all season really whenever Flynn Downs has not been there, and we haven't done it. We had our first game without Stuart Armstrong, and that didn't exactly go well either, did it? So yeah, lots of unknowns about this game. It could be a boring sort of 1-1 draw, typical end of season game, but have to be a little bit optimistic that we will actually pull our finger out and win this one 2-1.